Grace. In this video, I'm going to tell a story that I think is a prime example of how people get their views all mixed up, their loyalties, their what person they're going to take which side with, how they can easily get it mixed up because of various reasons. Okay, now this is a story, like I said, and I want to know what you think. I know what I think, and I want to know what you think. Now, in the story, there's a grand aunt, and her grandniece, and her grandniece's friend, and her grandniece's newborn child, and they're going shopping together, and they go to places that it's kind of it's kind of new, but something happens to the shopping cart where the grandniece's child, an infant that could not take care of itself, the child was sitting, and the grandniece and her friend had just walked off to go look at something because her friend had said, "Oh, look at this," and they left the child in the cart, and the grand aunt, an elderly woman, was standing there, and something happened to the cart, and the infant started to fall. So the elderly woman, she went for the child to hold to protect the child, and the cart and the infant all fell on the ground. Okay, they all fell, but she still was holding the child. The elderly woman was holding the child, protecting the child from hitting from the child hitting its head on the ground. Okay, when elderly people fall, it's seldom a good thing. Okay, there's going to be something bruised at least. I would say, I can't say 100%, but yeah, we all kind of know. So at that time, the the grandniece's friend, saw that they were on the ground. So she tells her friend, the grandniece, and the grandniece runs over there and grabs the child, and they're not even concerned about the elderly woman laying on the ground. And none of them. They were just, the grandniece starts yelling. The elderly woman gets up. She starts yelling at her, the grandniece starts yelling at her grand aunt, saying it's all your fault, and insulting her along the way, saying how it's all her fault. And she told her, she said, "Well, it's not my fault. I was protecting your child, and I want you to let me go to, take me back to your car and get my stuff, and I'm leaving." Okay. Grandniece was all self-righteous, but just for a second, you could see a second flash that that maybe she was wrong. But no, she was self-righteous, so she said, "Fine." So she took the elderly woman out to the car. Here it was, nighttime in big city, this kind of thing, and let her get her stuff out of the car. And there was a suitcase and other things. And here's this elderly woman, basically put out on the street at night in a big city, with no way to protect herself, no way to get home, out there in the middle of the street. They don't have payphones and stuff these days, unless you had a cell phone or something to call somebody. And the grandniece was still feeling self-righteous about it. So after that, somebody felt sorry for the elderly woman or something. They called the police. It wasn't the grandniece or anybody that the elderly woman knew, but somebody called the police. The police came out, and the police said, told the elderly woman, maybe there was just a misunderstanding. Maybe you need to go back with your your grandniece and have her take you home. And the elderly woman said no. She was not concerned about me. She was not concerned about my health. And she was yelling at me and very abusively. And I think that she's a threat to me. And the police officers try to calm it down. Young guys try to calm it down. They're around the same age as the grandniece. And one of them went inside to find the grandniece, and basically they had a store video on, the cameras had cameras on it, and they saw that at first the closer one you couldn't tell, but then the one further from it, you could tell that, yes, the elderly woman was protecting the child. It wasn't the elderly woman's fault. She was protecting the child, the infant. But in the meanwhile, the elderly woman said, I want you to call Adult Protective Services because my grandniece is a threat to me. Okay. The elderly woman had lived long enough to know that the type of person who would do something like that is not a good, decent person. Someone who would let an elderly woman, out on the street, basically, at nighttime by herself, like I said, that's not a decent person. That's not someone who's right in the mind. That's like a personality disorder person. And to not herself call the police and say, because, some places, depends on where you live, if she tried to keep her, the grandniece tried to keep her, grand aunt, that it would be considered kidnapping. But she could have called the police and said, this is the problem issue, and my grand, aunt, she won't let me, stay with me and everything, and she's on the street. But she didn't do that because she felt self-righteous. She felt like she was right, that this elderly woman was wrong, and she needed to be taught a lesson. See, it's getting twisted, right? The police had to call Adult Protective Services because the elderly woman asked for it. Adult Protective Services came out, and they determined that yes, the grandniece was a threat to the elderly woman. So the police told them, the elderly woman, she said she wanted a protective order, and they issued a protective order. They had a judge that issued it right away, that the grandniece could not be anywhere near the grand aunt. Okay, and now the grand aunt, she wanted to see proof that she was right. Okay, she wasn't wanting to see proof that she was wrong, so she wanted to see those store tapes, store camera. Well, the store camera picked up too, and even when she saw that yes, this elderly woman was protecting her child, she still felt she was still self-righteous, and she did not want to apologize. But when she heard that that her grand aunt was has a restraining order, she knew that this was something that's going to follow her the rest of her life. So she, as time, when all this process goes through, she's trying to get her grand aunt to drop charges against her, this kind of thing, and somehow lie and say that, so that she, the niece, doesn't have this following around her the rest of her life. Grand aunt, the elderly woman, no, she lived long enough to know this is a person society needs to be aware of. This is a person that they need to know that she is, and she's self-righteous. Even when she's wrong, she thinks people need to lie for her, to cheat for her, to whatever for her. Even when she's wrong, she doesn't have to apologize. She doesn't worry about her, in either situation. When the woman fell, the elderly woman, and when she left the elderly woman on the street, she didn't feel she was wrong about this. So the society needed to know. So she was not going to drop it, and she was going to let it stand, even though, this was a young woman. She was going to let it stand. And she had lived long enough to know that that's what needed to be done, even though, she loved her grandniece, and she loves her granddaughter, not granddaughter, her grandniece, and her niece, that, she can't allow it. She cannot allow this person to be the society not be aware of what she's capable of doing. Okay. Now, how do you see it? Would you say, oh, you can't let that follow somebody, around for the rest of their life that's so young? Say she was 20 or so, in her 20s. Yes, you can. And I know it's tough, what some people call tough love, but no, this is something that needs to stand out. It needs to show that, no, you can't treat anybody any way you want to and get away with it. And then expect them to do whatever it is to take to protect you when they weren't protecting, to protect them when they weren't protecting you. In fact, they were still self-righteous, that they didn't need to protect you. When it comes to elderly and children, yes, elderly and children need to be protected. There's a Child Protective Services where I live, and Adult Protective Services, okay, for reasons. you know. But what do you think? How would you say it? Would you say, oh no, she should feel sorry for her grandniece and not make it follow for the rest of her life? You know, some people would. Some people would see it that way. For a while, but I finished up that last clip, and then my mount popped off the windshield, and I put it back up and made another clip to wrap it up, and it popped off again in the middle of it. So, but anyway, what I was saying was, I know a lot of people would say, well, that's going to follow her around the rest of her life. Okay, she didn't care about the rest of the life of her elderly aunt. She wanted everything about her, that she felt self-righteous. She felt she could yell at an elderly person. She could leave her on the street at night, not, you know, unprotected, because she still felt self-righteous. She never apologized. She wanted proof that she was right when she found out she was wrong. She still didn't apologize. She wanted that great aunt to change everything around. It was all about her. To me, that one I would think is more like a psychopath, a sociopath. She felt no remorse, no guilt, no shame, nothing. And yeah, she wanted everything to be about her. Okay? And, you know, for it all to benefit her. And that whenever, you know, and I think that kind of thing should be, you know, society should be warned. Okay, what do you think? But I want to tell you, if you haven't figured this out already, it was a dream I had just a little while ago. Yeah, I fell asleep during the day after eating lunch. It was a dream, and I don't have a step niece. I mean, not a step niece, but a great niece at all. So this will definitely be in the future. And the dream was like in the future, and I was the elderly woman. I'm not elderly now, but in the future, yeah, you know, should be elderly. And and I woke up crying, but it was like, wow, this was definitely a dream that tells a story. You know, it really does. It tells a story that people can see where they could get confused. It's not about how young she is and, oh, she could change after that. Do they really change? If she did not have to pay the consequences of her actions, would she change? Would anybody that read it or saw it or heard about it, would they think, okay, I can treat anybody the way I want to and get away with it? You see? You know, we have to think. We really have to think about what are we putting out there. And even though it seems like the way some might see it, that the elderly woman, she's not going to live all that much longer, she shouldn't do that to a young woman. No, it was a young woman shouldn't have done it to the elderly woman. Okay, that's enough. That's my view. What about you? We'll wrap this up. If you want to subscribe, click the circle. If you're watching the video, you can click one of the rectangles. Like, subscribe, comment, and share if you would. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.